My name is Lena. I'm 26 years old, and this is the story of the night I stopped being my family's invisible daughter and became the woman who finally stood up for myself. It wasn't a transformation that happened in a single dramatic explosion, but rather the quiet shattering of a dam I had spent a lifetime building, brick by patient brick, from my own silence. For years, I had genuinely believed that being the quiet, accommodating one in the family was my unique strength. I was the steady, reliable current flowing beneath the dramatic waves my brother, Ethan, effortlessly created. I mistook their lack of demands for trust, their lack of praise for quiet approval. Turns out, my silence didn't make me strong. It just made me the easiest to betray, the most convenient to overlook, because they knew I would never make a sound. I grew up with just one brother, Ethan. He is 2 years younger than me, and he emerged from the womb with a charm that could disarm anyone, and a smile that my parents called their golden hour. He was the golden boy from his first breath. My parents didn't just love him, they adored him. They curated a world where his every step was celebrated. The evidence was etched into the very walls of our home. When he managed to scrape a B+ in a class he'd been failing, they had the report card framed and hung it in the hallway. I remember standing before it, a fresh report card of my own in my backpack, bearing the weight of straight A's. When I showed them, my mother's only comment was a gentle, dismissive pat on the shoulder. "Don't brag, Lena. No one likes a show off." So I learned to fold my achievements into smaller and smaller squares, tucking them away where no one could see them. By the time we navigated the turbulent waters of college, the family narrative was set in stone, immutable and cold. Ethan could do no wrong. He dropped out after 2 semesters, claiming he needed to find himself through a cross-country road trip with friends. My parents called it a brave and soulful decision, funding his journey of self-discovery. Meanwhile, when I secured a competitive, full-ride scholarship for my master's in environmental science, a goal I had worked toward for years, the news was met with a distracted, "That's nice, dear," over the dinner table, before the conversation swiftly returned to whether Ethan was eating enough protein on his trip. After college, our lives diverged into a parody of fairness. I started working for a nonprofit, my passion for saving the planet translating into a modest salary that just covered the rent from a small, sunlit apartment downtown. I was proud of my independence. Meanwhile, Ethan moved back into our childhood home, working a casual part-time job at a friend's skate shop and living completely rent-free. When I gently questioned this arrangement, my mother's voice was laced with justification. "He's finding his feet, Lena. He's saving up for his future." The unspoken words hung in the air, as clear as if she'd shouted them. Mine, with my degree, my job, and my self-sufficient life, apparently didn't need saving. My future was already here, and it was expected to remain quiet, understanding, and forever in the background. But that was all about to change. The 3 years that followed were the most fulfilling of my life. I had finally, painstakingly, built a life I was genuinely proud of. It was small, yes, and by most standards, modest. But it was independent, it was authentic, and for the first time, every single piece of it was my own. I had curated my own happiness, and it felt unshakable. That's when the foundation was tested. That's when my grandmother passed away. Nana was my sanctuary. She was the only person in my entire family who truly saw me, not the quiet, accommodating daughter, but the girl with a fiery spirit and a curious heart. It was in her warm, flour-dusted kitchen that she taught me how to knead dough until it was smooth, her hands guiding mine. She was the one I called late at night to cry to after bad breakups, and she would listen for hours. Her quiet, "I know, my love," a balm on every hurt. Most importantly, she was my champion. In her firm, unwavering tone, she would always say, "When I'm gone, you'll have what's rightfully yours. I've made sure of it." I never pressed her on what she meant. Her love was inheritance enough. She left me her beach cottage. Not just a property, but a living scrapbook of my soul. It was the place where I had spent every glorious, sun-drenched summer of my childhood, building sandcastles and collecting seashells. It wasn't a mansion. It was a humble, weathered structure with peeling white paint and the perpetual, comforting smell of salt ingrained in its very walls. When the lawyer read his will aloud in that sterile office, my heart almost stopped. The cottage, Seabreeze, was listed clearly under my name. Mine. A wave of pure, unadulterated validation washed over me. For once, something in life had gone my way. It felt like a final, powerful blessing from the only person who had ever believed in me. Or so I thought. The call came 2 weeks later. My mother's voice was saccharine. "Sweetie, we've been thinking. Since Ethan's engaged now, he and Mia could really use the beach house. They're planning to start a family, and it's wasted just sitting there." Wasted. The word hit me like a physical slap, stinging and disrespectful. All the memories, Nana's love, my sanctuary, reduced to being wasted? "Mom, Grandma left it to me," I said, my voice trembling with hurt and disbelief. "I know, but families share, Lena. Don't be selfish." Selfish? There it was, the label they had always used to shut me up, to keep me in my place. A month later, needing to feel close to Nana, I drove to the cottage, planning to spend the weekend repainting the kitchen a cheerful yellow. But when I arrived, my key didn't turn. The locks had been changed. From inside, I heard voices, Ethan and Mia, laughing. Peering through the window, I saw them in the living room, holding paint rollers, their belongings already scattered around. Mia saw me and jumped. "Oh my God, Lena, you're early," she said, her voice tight with awkwardness. "Your parents told us you agreed to transfer the deed." "What?" Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, a familiar gesture of guilt. "Yeah, they said you didn't really want the place, that the city life was more you. Mom even handled all the paperwork for you." My stomach plummeted. I didn't say another word. I ran outside, my hands shaking so violently I could barely open my phone. I logged into the county property records website, my breath caught in my throat. And there it was. The deed for Seabreeze had been officially transferred to Ethan's name. It was listed as a gift, electronically signed by me. Except I had never ever signed anything. The silence I had cultivated for a lifetime shattered in that moment, replaced with a roaring, righteous fire. I confronted my parents that very night, the sting of betrayal still fresh on my skin. They were in the living room, the scene of 1,000 previous injustices, my father swirling a glass of amber scotch and my mother pretending to read. When I laid it out, my voice cracking with the weight of their crime, my dad didn't even look up from his drink. "It's still in the family," he said, his tone infuriatingly calm, as if he were discussing the weather. "You don't even go there. Ethan deserves a little stability. You've always been fine on your own." "Fine?" I said, the word tearing out of me, my whole body trembling. "You committed a crime. You forged my signature." "Watch your tone, young lady," my mom snapped, finally looking at me, her eyes sharp with warning. "We did what was best for everyone. We made a practical decision for this family." Everyone but me. The unspoken coda to every family discussion. My well-being was never part of their calculus. I spent the next few weeks drowning in a silent, suffocating pool of anger and disbelief. But in the depths of that despair, a memory surfaced, a lifeline. My grandmother's old attorney, Mr. Delgado, a kind, meticulous man who had handled all of Nana's estate matters, and whose eyes had held a particular warmth for her favorite granddaughter. I called his office, my voice barely a whisper, as I explained what had happened. He grew very quiet on the other end of the line. "Lena," he said, his voice grave, "your grandmother put very strict, very specific instructions in her will, The house was to remain in your name unless you personally and without coercion decided otherwise. If that transfer was forged, it's not just a breach of trust, it's a felony. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. He asked me to come to his office immediately with any documents I had. Sitting across from his massive oak desk, I watched as he placed my driver's license and a signed check next to the fraudulent deed transfer document. He adjusted his glasses, his eyes scanning the papers, and his expression hardened into one of pure, unadulterated professional fury. "This," he said, tapping the deed with a rigid finger, "is not you. The stroke, the pressure, the flourish on the L, it's a clumsy imitation." And just like that, I had proof. I had a weapon. For weeks, I didn't say a word to my family. I waited, the folder containing Mr. Delgado's damning report burning a hole in my bag. I wanted the right moment, a stage grand enough for the truth. And that moment came sooner than I expected. Ethan and Mia were having their lavish engagement dinner in the grand ballroom of a fancy hotel. My parents had booked it, of course. The room was filled with hundreds of guests, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the hum of empty congratulations. When the toast started, my dad raised his glass. "To our son, Ethan, the future of this family and the most selfless man we know." The room erupted in obedient laughter and applause. Then Ethan took the microphone, beaming with entitlement. "I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible parents," he said, "who even helped us secure our dream home, the family beach cottage." That was it. The final lie delivered so casually. I stood up, my heart pounding not with fear, but with a long-suppressed power. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. "Funny," I said, my voice clear and loud, cutting through the tension, "because that dream home was mine." A wave of gasps rippled through the ballroom. Mia looked at me, utterly confused. Ethan froze, the smile wiped from his face. I walked calmly to the stage, pulling the folder from my bag. "These are the legal records," I announced, holding them aloft. "My parents forged my signature to give Ethan the inheritance my grandmother left specifically to me. Her attorney, Mr. Delgado, has confirmed it is a federal offense." "Lena, for God's sake, sit down," my mother hissed, her face a mask of crimson fury. "No," I said, looking directly at her. "I've been sitting down my entire life." You could hear a pin drop in the cavernous room. I turned and handed the documents, not to my brother, but to Mia. She took them, her hands trembling as she scanned the first page. She looked up at Ethan, her face pale as paper. "You knew?" she whispered, her voice breaking. He stammered, scrambling for a lie. I thought you agreed. Mom and Dad said you agreed." I looked out at the stunned, silent crowd, then back at my crumbling family. "Funny," I said for the third and final time, my voice steady as stone. "Nobody ever asks what I agree to." I walked out of that ballroom before any of them could form a response, the heavy silence at my back more powerful than any applause. My phone buzzed nonstop that night. Mom, Dad, Ethan, a frantic, vibrating chorus of panic. They called and texted, not with apologies, but with demands to talk this out privately, to sweep their crime back under the rug where all our family's problems festered. But it was far too late for that. Mr. Delgado filed the official fraud complaint the following Monday. The legal machinery, once set in motion, was swift and merciless. Within a month, the cottage deed was irrevocably back in my name, the fraudulent transfer voided as if it had never existed. The fallout was a Cold War. My parents didn't speak to me, they simply avoided me, their silence a fortress of shame and blame. Ethan sent a single telling text. "You didn't have to ruin the engagement." It was not an apology, but an accusation. I never replied. Some bridges are not worth crossing again. It's been 6 months now. I spend my weekends at the cottage, my cottage. I fill the rooms with fresh paint, covering the ghosts of their intrusion. I plant rosemary and thyme by the sun-warmed porch, putting down roots where they tried to upend mine. The sea here is quiet. Its rhythmic crash is a constant, soothing companion, so unlike the human chaos I finally left behind. Sometimes I sit by the window in Nana's old armchair as dusk falls, listening to the waves and thinking about the strange, painful truth of how easily people you love can rewrite your place in their story, casting you as a supporting character in a narrative you never chose. But now I'm writing my own. My parents' silence doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't feel like a punishment. It just means peace. If you've ever had your worth dismissed or your love taken for granted, if you've ever been told you're too much for simply wanting what is rightfully yours, then you know this feeling. Subscribe right now and tell me where you're watching from. Let me know I'm not alone. Because sometimes the family that betrays you teaches you the most important lesson of all, that you were never the problem. They just couldn't handle your strength once you finally found it.